残酷な天使の回れ回れ回れよ水車回れ回ってお日さん呼んで
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Adcast. It is, as we try to define every week, an ill-defined podcast about the study of modern visual culture. I am your host, Renu. Listen, the other time I introduced myself as the Kira Kira Aidoru. I don't know. I don't know about that. But I'm joined by...
You have to go with the bit. Come on. You have to be our Kira Kira idol, and okay. I'm Chaboy.
What does that mean, though?
I don't think it matters what that means. It's ill-defined. Like our podcast.
I'm an ill-defined Aidoru, and I have my ill-defined boy suit.
Yeah, that is actually how I would describe myself. I am an ill-defined boy. You just kind of look at me, and it's like a blur.
Oh, that sounds concerning.
You've seen me in real life. You know that this is what it's like.
But I don't want to have to question my vision every time I look at you and think that I might need like glasses.
I mean, that's fair. Listen, I'm so far along the line of having glasses that it's just my eyes are just gone.
So you're gonna bring everyone down to your level?
Yeah.
Whenever they look at you.
When people look at my face, it'll be like if I looked at someone's face without my glasses on. So.
That's so evil, man.
Yeah, I know. It's a tough existence, people not knowing your face, but everybody knows the Blur Boy. I'm a local legend. I'm a local legend, like the Mothman.
All right. Well, this week AD stands for Archaic Tale because we are talking about Tale of Princess Kaguya.
Just really funny because this is a relatable movie. It's a very big mood, you might say.
It is. I like it a lot. So, before we jump into it, what you been up to, boy?
Well, for one, friendship ended with Effie Heroes. Now Grand Blue Fantasy is my best friend.
Wait, I'm still friends with Effie Heroes?
That's too bad, Renu. Then we can't be friends.
No!
So, a couple weeks ago, my friend convinced me to start playing Grand Blue Fantasy.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, sure. And it's really obnoxious and obtuse, and nothing in it makes sense for the first, 20 hours you play it. But then after that, it's just like, oh, I get it. And you're just hooked. And it is now my best friend because I realize now that Grand Blue Fantasy treats me right, whereas Fire Emblem Heroes just kind of expects me to, be there for Fire Emblem Heroes. And it's like, I don't have the emotional energy for you, Fire Emblem Heroes. Grand Blue Fantasy will embrace me in a comfortable grind, and I will grind my boss battles every day during my strike time so that I can make my daggers stronger, so that I can make my pretty boyas stronger. For real though, it is a well-designed game.
Okay.
In the sense that it's basically as close to a mobile game as you can get with a hardcore JRPG battle format.
Okay.
But it's obviously broken up into sections to be technically it's a mobile game, but actually it's like a browser game. So it's more fully featured than a mobile game is. It's been around for 4 years now. I think they just celebrated their 4th anniversary in March. And there's just so much content to go through, and they're also just really generous with the premium currency, right? Oh. So for Golden Week, they were like, here, our gacha machine? Every day you get 10 free pulls on the gacha machine, which guarantees you at least one SR or SSR character. And how could I go back to Fire Emblem Heroes after that, right?
Yeah.
Because, sure, Fire Emblem Heroes has its, orb system, and you can, use it to maximize your percentage on whatever heroes you want. But Grand Blue Fantasy is straight up like, if you save enough crystals, which you can do because you just do quests and stuff.
Right.
If you can save enough crystals, you can just roll 10 times at a time, and at least one of them is guaranteed to be half decent, probably. And then for events, they'll just fucking give you rolls every day. So I got like 50 rolls and like a bunch of cool characters.
Okay.
And I don't even have to worry about spending. I haven't spent a single dime on this.
See, that's what I was about to ask you. Is that
no? I've not spent any money.
Okay, good. Then I approve. I approve of your new addiction.
Yeah, I am solidly into like the beginnings of the mid game.
Okay.
I'm ranked something like 50, which is like just taking baby steps into the mid game.
Okay.
Fumbling around with my terrible weapon grid full of knives. I have a lot. It's weird. The like actual power system is very bizarre and obtuse, but okay. You eventually wrap your head around it.
Okay.
No, it's good. There's a lot of depth to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's filling my RPG itch, and at the same time, it's like filling the kind of mobile game void in my life.
Void? After your addiction with Fire Emblem?
I say void because it just filled my heart and more.
It just replaced your old heart with the new heart. Right.
Like there's like a void in my heart that's always like, I need something, casual to do when I have like a little bit of off time here and there. And that's Grand Blue Fantasy. And then also if I like want to delve into hardcore RPG, I can also just play Grand Blue Fantasy more. No, but on top of that, like it really shows that this game has a lot of, at the very least, in terms of writing.
Okay.
I don't know about balance. I'm sure it's vaguely balanced. It's whatever. Mobile games are like that. No, it's the story is actually really good. Like the writing is good. Mm-hmm. Aside from the kind of like side quests that are only there purely for the sake of getting you more crystals, which is what you use to roll. It's just like orbs. The actual main storyline is pretty good. It's like pretty compelling. You have to get a little bit into it before you kind of get attached to the characters and you start caring. But I played through one of the events that they had is an event called What Makes the Sky Blue, which is what they did for their 3rd anniversary. And it's like 8 chapters long or something, 8 or 9 chapters long. And each chapter is like 4 distinct parts. So it's like 36 distinct episodes or whatever. Anyway, it's a continuing narrative, and it feels like, and this is not like a term that I like to kind of swing around lightly, but it feels very cinematic.
A cinematic mobile game?
Yeah, so it felt like I was watching an animated movie, except there was only text and like character models on the screen.
Oh,
so it felt like it was a visual novel, but with the impact and the emotional satisfaction of a movie. I actually felt quite emotional by the end of it. I was like, wow, damn.
Oh,
damn.
Soup, you're going to make me download it. No! I love story. No.
You should, at least for the story, but at the same time, I just can't. It's not something I can recommend lightly because it's a commitment. Like, oh my god, you really have to just like go for it. I mean, you can play casually and not like care about any of this stuff and just like do events and stuff, because events are not that hard actually.
Okay.
They tend to be pretty easy. They're not like difficulty gated at all.
Sure.
But yeah, it would be a lot easier if you kind of min-maxed, at least in the beginning, to get some of the stuff you need to progress, I guess. Like, I was lucky in that it did not take me very long to re-roll into good characters.
So did you like uninstall, reinstall until you got good ones?
Well, it's a browser game, so you don't have to do that.
Oh.
So it's a browser game, so you can just use your email. And if you're using Gmail, it turns out Gmail, you can actually just like hash your Gmail, which basically means you can add +1, +2, +3, and they'll be treated as separate instances of emails.
Oh.
But they'll all go to that email account. So I I only had to reroll 6 times, and I eventually got like a handful of okay characters. And I started going. I built water first, is my first element, because that's generally what you want to do. You want to build an element. I'm building water right now, and I was blessed with like 4 or 5 S tier like water characters, so that's why I went that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. The story is great, and if you need something like, if you need any kind of like normalcy or a constant in your life, Grand Blue Fantasy will be there. Every day they'll just be like, all right, come back into the grind, do your magnas, do your dailies, and then you'll be like, yes, sir.
This is a routine, I think, rather than normalcy.
It's a routine. Listen, people have this sometimes where they're just like, they fall into their routine, and then if they don't have any kind of routine, they'd feel uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, no, I get that.
Like I get upset when I'm just like, whoa, I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Grand Blue Fantasy, I recommend it if you're into mobile games, you want something a little bit more challenging, and you're ready to put like 1 billion hours into something.
I have another question, which is it based on any like because Fire Emblem Heroes is obviously based on the Fire Emblem franchise. Is Grand Blue Fantasy like that? Or is it its own thing?
Grand Blue Fantasy is its own IP, but it's made by Cygames, who make a bunch of mobile games in Japan.
Okay.
They do Rage of Bahamut,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the Shadowverse is what it's called. Yeah, Shadowverse, which is a collectible card game published by Cygames, and there's a lot of crossover, I will say.
Okay.
Some of the characters from Shadowverse or Bahamut come into Grand Blue. Grand Blue also, okay, and this is the reason I started playing Grand Blue Fantasy. It has collabs. They recently wrapped up a Detective Conan collab.
No!
But wait. Get this. In June, they will have a Persona 5 collab.
I missed my Conan boy, but I can still get my Persona babes.
Yes.
Oh no.
If you do start, it would be easiest to start in a time when I guess you don't spend money on mobile games, so this is like only vaguely applicable. But if you start during a special event, actually, if you started now, you'd start during a Flash Gala, which is a good thing to start during, because it doubles the SSR rate. Yeah. And it has limited edition characters. Basically, they only come around with Flash Galas. I'm currently saving up crystals so I can attempt.
It sounds a little bit like Puzzle and Dragons, but with way more plot and things going on.
Yeah, it's like if Puzzle and Dragons had a plot and was a JRPG.
Yeah.
And felt meaningful and contextualized.
I dig that because I liked the mechanics of Puzzle and Dragons or whatever, but there wasn't anything else to it.
Yeah. It definitely has that JRPG, not JRPG. It has, because it's a turn-based RPG, but it has that Japanese mobile game feel where it does feel to some extent like premium, I guess. Like it feels like there's a lot of content there, because in Grand Blue Fantasy there is a lot of content and you will never be gated out of like any of it. You will go as long as you physically can, because they don't really stop giving you like potions for like stamina. I mean, this, to be fair, I have this in Fire Emblem Heroes too. I have like 800 stamina potions and just nowhere to use them.
Yeah, exactly.
I have no reason to. I'm just like, okay, I spent all my stamina. I guess I'm done for now, whatever.
Right.
But in Grand Blue Fantasy, your stamina runs out pretty quickly, because a lot of the raids and quests are pretty stamina intensive, but they give you so many items that it's like to refill them, and there's so many ways to get items to refill your stamina that it's irrelevant. I have not once in like weeks of playing, hours at a time, been locked out of content because I didn't have enough stamina.
Oh, good. Wow.
Plus, every time you level up, it overfills you to stamina. So, if you're doing the first like 20 or so levels, which are like, because obviously they're like really fast, they go by really quickly, you'll have like 300 stamina, and quests only cost like 5 or 10.
Interesting. Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, I burnt all of it on raids, so I ended up working out. But yeah, No, it's really fun. Also, there's raids and like a lot of player-to-player interaction, surprisingly, for a turn-based RPG game. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm enjoying it a lot.
Nice.
And whether or not you will enjoy it, I think comes down to how much you want to invest time-wise or money-wise into it, and how much patience you have, essentially, or how much you're invested in the game.
Right.
Which obviously you won't know until you start playing.
Right. Yeah, because I feel like my investment in Fire Emblem Heroes is purely, to collect the babes.
Dude,
But,
my interest has totally capped because like I haven't been doing anything. I haven't even been collecting my daily orbs. So it's like I don't have enough orbs for anything. I rolled like once on the bridal banner. And I didn't get anybody. And I was
really?
like, okay.
I got a Ninian.
Oh, I love the art for Ninian.
I know.
Actually,
that's why
that
she was the one I wanted the most. I was like, I like Tharja and everything, but Ninian's art is really, really good.
Yeah. I was also just like burned because, I don't need Fire Emblem Heroes anymore. Like,
the craze has ended for you.
I did my time. Now I want to play a real Fire Emblem game. Well, okay, here's the problem with Fire Emblem Heroes, right? Fire Emblem Heroes is a young mobile game, so there's not a lot of content to do in it, and at the same time, there's a lot of kind of filler content that you can spend your time on.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere or you're doing anything.
Yeah.
Whereas in Grand Blue Fantasy, because even the story itself stretches on for like 100-some chapters. It's like if reading manga required more button clicks.
Oh, okay.
Right? It does actually feel structured very much like a decently written manga. And there are parts where I think the part like the writing gets better is the thing. That's why what makes the Sky Blue is so good, because it has all of the dramatic kind of peaks and the raising of the tension that a movie has, especially an animated movie, where it's like, because that thing in animated movies or movies, side movies of like content of like main content, right? Where in the beginning, like something is happening. It's like kind of slice of lifey. All of the people are like split up doing whatever, right? Okay. And then some shit goes down, so your party gets together, and you're like, "Oh, let's investigate this." And then at the climax end of the movie, all of your friends that you've been helping along the way on your journey come, and they're like, "We'll help you fend off these enemies." And you're like, "My heart is swelling with joy and pride right now."
Yeah.
I have a ton of praise for Grand Blue Fantasy. We've been talking about it for like 10 minutes.
I know. I was going to say, right after you were done with your enthusiasm, I was going to try and redirect us back to our topic at hand, Princess Kaguya.
Wait, before that, what have you been up to?
Oh my gosh, I have a cheesy cakey update.
Oh my god, do you?
Yeah. So also like special shout outs to Lee Hama, who like texted us or tweeted us back about our podcast about gourmet hounds.
About
and
our cheesecake adventure. She gave you cheesecake power.
Yes, she did. She wished me good luck. And I was like, yes, I feel it. Thank you.
I do this for you.
I do these. So I abandoned the rice cooker recipe to try out another one. I might try the rice cooker one again later. But I wanted to try like the oven recipe this time. And this one, I tried it because in the title it said no fail.
No fail. There's no possible way you could fail this recipe.
Yeah, and I believed in it too, and so I made it. And I liked this recipe because it broke it down in ways that I could understand, because it's like, dude, you're thinking about it way too much. It's basically a sponge cake with, cream cheese and everything, right? And so I was like, okay, I can get that. And so like I was really careful with how I mixed everything, mix it thoroughly so that there wasn't any like chunks or whatever. And yeah, so it turned out, and it was kind of lumpy on the top because I didn't do the whole smoothing thing that you're supposed to do to make it all nice and beautiful on the top. But the flavor and the texture were just so freaking spot on. It was so creamy and so soft, and it had like that nice golden brown on the top. The only problem is that it wasn't jiggly because it wasn't tall enough, right? Because it floated up or it rose up, and then, you know, it's supposed to sink back down a little, but it just sunk back down to like normal cake size. So it was basically like a sponge cake, but with a nice fluffy cheesecake texture to it. I think next time I'm gonna try and mix it more and try and fluff it up like super a lot. And hopefully get it tall enough so that it does the jiggle soup.
I think did you sieve it? Like, did you pass it through a strainer?
I didn't do that. Yeah, I should have done that.
I'd recommend trying that.
Yeah. Because I don't have a strainer, which is why I skipped that step.
You don't have a strainer?
I have one for like vegetables, but like not for something like this, right? That I don't have like a fine strainer.
Oh, okay. Well, you should pick one up, especially if you're gonna do baking. Come on.
Listen, I left it at home. I don't have one in my apartment.
That's unfortunate. You should consider picking one up.
Yeah, they're cheap, so I can just get one.
I only have one question for you.
Yeah.
Where's my fucking picture? You promised me a picture.
I ate the cheesecake.
I know you ate the cheesecake. Where was my picture of the cheesecake?
Okay,
you promised.
I don't want to take a picture of it till I'm like I get a really good one.
No, we want progress pictures.
No, I definitely could not take a picture of the first one. I was so ashamed. I tossed it in the trash immediately.
Listen, we need progress pictures like some kind of cheesecake yearbook. So it's like, be careful who you call ugly in middle school.
Well, I could take a picture of this one. There's still one slice left, so I can take a picture.
Take a picture of that. Okay. Don't forget before you eat it.
I probably will eat it tonight.
then don't forget. Write yourself a note or something. Just you need to take that picture. I want it. I want it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I'm making progress. It was edible this time. Bless.
It's good. You're gonna get sick of cheesecake at this rate.
I know. I think I'm gonna take a break. Well, thankfully, I have Animazement this weekend, and so then I won't be able to make any kind of cheesecake or whatever, right? Because I'll be at Animazement, and then maybe the week after I can make some more.
Yeah. Let's do it up. Well,
yeah.
I hope that your cheesecake ventures go good. I hope that one day you'll have a perfect cheesecake son.
I want a perfect, fluffy Japanese cheesecake that I can call my own.
We're gonna name him Jeffrey.
That's not a Japanese name, but okay.
Jeffrey. I don't know what's the Japanese equivalent of Jeffrey.
You tell me.
I don't think Japanese names tend to. I don't have anything. I'm sorry to disappoint. I have nothing. Let's talk about the Tale of Princess Kaguya.
Jeffrey. Yeah, Tale of Princess Kaguya.
So the Tale of Princess Kaguya is a Ghibli movie that is not directed by our main man Miyazaki. It was directed by Isao Takahata, who was the co-founder of Studio Ghibli, who unfortunately passed away in April of 2018, which is this year. Which is why we're talking about it, because that's a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
So if you are not familiar, Isao Takahata was basically the other big name at Ghibli, and was the director of Pompoko and Grave of the Fireflies. So obviously you know that this movie will hit you in all of the feelings places, because all of Takahata's movies do. Yeah.
Oh my god. Grave of the Fireflies was traumatizingly good.
Yeah, no. So the Tale of Princess Kaguya is based on an old Japanese folk tale called The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter. And it's basically just about this old bamboo cutter who finds a little baby in a bamboo shoot. It's kind of like a Cabbage Patch Kid, except way, way less terrifying.
I feel like Cabbage Patch Kids were before our time, and yet we still know about them.
Well, here's the thing, Renu, is that certain relics of a bygone age still instill in us today the horrors that they wrought in the past.
Yeah.
For instance, Cabbage Patch Kids and their soulless eyes. troll dolls and their soulless eyes and crazy hair.
I was in the troll doll era and the Furby era.
Furbies with their soulless eyes. And I'm sensing a trend here. What I'm getting at is you should replace all of these creepy ass doll eyes with anime ugu eyes, and if you do, at least it will be funny to look at.
So you would never keep a doll display in your house, but you would keep like anime doll display.
Right, exactly. People except for weirdos don't keep Cabbage Patch Kids or troll dolls collected in their house. But only mild weirdos keep lots of anime figurines in their house.
Some grandfather or grandmother and their children are very upset with you right now.
Listen, I would be grateful to receive a collection of hand-me-down anime goods.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have for that bit. I don't have anything else.
But you would probably burn a box of Cabbage Patch Kids.
I would at the very least resell them. I'm sure I could get a good sale price, especially if I tacked on the word haunted. Oh, heck yeah.
Oh my god.
Be like, haunted Cabbage Patch Kids. People would be like, that sounds legit as heck. You know what I mean? Like, people love that stuff.
Sure.
Whatever. Okay, so let's talk about the original tale, because I think that's kind of important.
Derailed.
Because I made a joke about Cabbage Patch Kids and we had to follow up on it. We have to explore the implications of Cabbage Patch Kids upon our culture.
Yeah.
It is modern visual culture.
Cabbage Patch Kids are visual.
I mean, they are visual. You look at them with your eyeballs and you have to exist in the same physical realm as them, which kind of makes my skin crawl just thinking about it.
Oh my god.
So let's talk about the Tale of Princess Kaguya in the original tale of the bamboo cutter.
Yeah.
It is about a old man who, finds a little baby. He takes it back and they raise the baby, and they keep finding these like cool bamboo shoots that shoot out money and clothes for little baby Kaguya here. Eventually she becomes a princess, and a bunch of suitors come and they're just like, please, Princess Kaguya. Or I don't think she becomes a princess in the original tale. Actually, I think people just hear about how beautiful she is. And so 5 suitors come and they're just like, please let me marry you. You're so pretty. And she's just like, well, if you want to marry me, then you must get the jeweled branch of Horai, which is like a floating sky island that doesn't exist. And she gives them these impossible tasks, and they all fail, and one of them dies. And then she falls in love with the emperor, but then she has to.
I from the version that I read, they never fell in love. The emperor fell in love with her, and she respected him enough to like be kind to him and answer his letters, but she never it never explicitly says that she falls in love with him. But at least the version that I read, the translation or whatever that I read. So.
The versions that I read tend to go in that direction. Because she gives him a letter, and inside the letter is the elixir of life. And then she has to go back to the moon because she's from the moon. And then he climbs the mountain closest to heaven and burns the letter because he doesn't want to live forever without her. And then the name of the mountain is then named after the elixir of immortality. Thus, Mount Fuji.
Mount Fuji.
So the actual historical implications of this are that Mount Fuji was an active volcano, which is, that's obviously the tale is used to explain why the mountain is smoking. It's weird otherwise. But yeah, let's talk about that and how that differs in the movie.
Yeah. So the movie basically retells the whole, the fairy tale, obviously. I think it's interesting because it spends basically the first half of the movie telling a lot of the details that the actual tale leaves out, which is like how Kaguya grows up with their adoptive parents. And then in the second half, it switches over to what the bulk of the tale does in the original, which is talks about the suitors and their quests to find and marry Princess Kaguya.
I love the guy that just dies because he falls into a pot wrong.
I don't remember how it is I think in the original he had that really fancy apparatus to get up to the nest, but then because he just falls off, he like breaks his spine, but they don't actually say he falls into a pot. But in the movie, he does, and it's funny, but then you find out that he's dead.
Yeah, then he's dead, and you're like, oh no.
And he was the youngest one, too. It was like,
Oh, no.
And he had freckles, and he was just a kid. I don't know. Yeah.
There's a lot of like little differences.
Yeah.
In the movie and in the original tale.
Yeah.
The biggest one probably is just that at the end she becomes a princess, and then she completely rebukes the emperor like entirely, right? He's a non-factor.
Yeah. She wasn't as kind to him as in the original tale, where she does refuse him because she says like, dude, I can't marry you. I gotta go back to the moon or I'm gonna leave soon. In the movie, they changed that dynamic entirely, which I actually like the way that they changed it in a sense. Yeah. Because it kind of like it in the movie they explain, or at least like give like kind of like hint at stuff as to why the moon people come back and sweep Kaguya back up and why she was sent there in the first place, because the original tale doesn't go into that at all.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about that thing that we were talking about just now, about the ending for Kaguya and the Emperor.
Yeah.
Where instead of kind of this like maybe romance, maybe, courtesy letter returning, she rebukes him entirely because he's creepy. And
because
he's got a big
freaking
chin.
like ran up in her room and grabbed her and like held her.
Yeah, and then she rightfully went, nope.
Yeah, she noped right out of that. I was like, this fool just invaded her personal space. She ain't never been held by a man before. And he runs up in there because he's the emperor. And he's like, no woman has ever said that they didn't like this.
I love it because if you look at him, he's like just on the edge of like a parody character for like a Bishonen. Like he's got the chin that's like...
He's got the Dorito face.
He has the Dorito face. Decidedly pointy.
I really liked how they drew him.
But not enough to be like too much. I think they found the line and they kept to it, and it's so good.
Yes, it's so good. And they drew his little lips, and they drew like his face was the Dorito but slender and curved, right? So he's a refined Dorito. But then his clothes are like gaudy and gold, and then they have that giant bulky shape to it. So it's like that this guy is like rich beyond your wildest dreams, and like the way that they did the design is so good.
He's dressed like an emperor.
He's dressed like an emperor.
He also looks like one with his Dorito face.
Jeez.
But yeah, no, I think that in a lot of ways, the decision to change that is a thematic one. And I think it's in line very much with the way that Ghibli operates. There's a really famous quote from Hayao Miyazaki that everybody quotes like every 2 seconds, which is not the one where he's just like, anime was a mistake, which is a misattributed quote anyway.
Yeah.
Anime was a mistake, Benjamin Franklin. Your waifu sucks, Abraham Lincoln. The one where he's just like, I don't like this unwritten rule that because there's a man and a woman in a movie together, they have to, kiss or whatever, or be romantically involved. Like, I think there's other ways of getting at love, right? And I think that's kind of what it is, right? Like, in a lot of ways, because we're moving away from the emperor, like the emperor becomes a non-factor. He doesn't matter at all.
Right.
Beyond like activating her moon powers, I guess.
Right.
The story then becomes one that's very heavily about familial love and about the forms that it takes. And I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, I love that they emphasize that, like, the movie was all about basically exploring Princess Kaguya as a person rather than like a folktale figure.
Right, like a mythical figure.
Right.
There's a lot of like characterization and humanizing work done. I think to great effect. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because she starts off, she's the adopted daughter of this poor old couple, and so she grows up like a country girl, and she plays with all the neighborhood kids, and there's a lot of really beautiful shots of them just playing out in the fields and the flowers and the farmland. And then she suddenly gets thrust into this world of, nobility and wealth because her parents, they think that what's best for her is to raise her like an actual princess, right? They think that that's what the gods want after having bestowed them this god-like girl.
I mean, they gave them a pot of money. Like,
yeah, they gave them bamboos of money and clothes and this girl who was, in their eyes like a goddess, right? And so they decide, the proper thing to do would be to raise her like an actual princess instead of raising her like, I think the father said like she'll only be like a farmer girl or a country girl if she grows up here. So we have to take her to the capital and raise her proper.
Right.
And she, because she's forced into these circumstances, she doesn't want to disappoint her parents because later on they put it into words, but basically they've given up everything and they've devoted everything for her happiness, right? And she feels a responsibility to provide for them by being a good daughter.
It's a story about obligation to one's parents,
right,
versus freedom. Which, listen, we both grew up in Asian families. I'm sure this is very relatable.
It's super relatable.
It's like on one hand,
yeah,
I do not wish to be bound by any kind of limiting factor in my life. Like, I don't want to become a lawyer, right? It's just like, I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to do those things. But at the same time, in a certain sense, it feels like if you're not, you're kind of rebuking your parents' efforts, and that sucks.
Yeah, I was on the doctor track, so, I followed that for a while.
Yeah, but you ended up in, like, doctor animation. Doctor animation.
Yeah, now I'm in doctor animation, so it's fine. Like, I found a happy medium. You got there
eventually.
Yeah. But, no, it's super relatable.
I am going to end up in literate homelessness.
My God, you'll be fine.
I'm sure it'll be okay. Yeah. No, it is a big deal. And okay, let's not ignore historical context here, right? Like, Japan is a very Confucian society.
Yes.
That's a big deal.
Yes, absolutely.
Whatever we're feeling is way amplified for an East Asian audience.
Yes.
This is a huge deal. To us, we can find it relatable. We can say like, oh, I know what that feeling is like, one's obligation, one's parents, but there it's like law, right? Like, that is not something that you go against.
Right. Like, what we feel now is like such a sub-derivative of that. It's like not even.
And I do think that the movie does go to great lengths to kind of problematize that mentality of obligation.
Yeah.
And to say like, at the end of the day, right? Like, what matters the most is that you're happy.
Right.
Your parent. It's not that you're having your parents' conception of happiness, but yours.
Right. And
then you get whisked away to the moon.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's such a hard-hitting message because at the end, she is loyal to her parents and she gives her father the choice. She says, look, I will fulfill whatever duties you want me to do. Like, if you want me to marry the emperor, I will marry the emperor. If you want that, that court position, you can have it. Just know that my life will end right after you get that court position because I cannot live like this anymore. Like, I want to be a good daughter, but I am not happy. And this life that I have right now is not making me happy. And her parents, her father at least like realizes, oh my God, like, of course, like, I want you to be happy. I'm going to say no to the emperor for you. And all I want for you is to stay here with us. And it's so, I don't know, it's so pivotal. It's
well, I think that's why the ending of the movie feels so emotional and so impactful.
Yeah.
It's because when that scene happens, when her father realizes like, I see now, right? Like, I'm gonna go tell the emperor no for you, and then after that, right, they have such a short time after that,
right,
before she's whisked away to the moon, and nobody wants her to go,
right. And like, even her, like, she realized her mistake. Well, because the whole encounter with the emperor, the way that they set that up was basically to help, in my thinking, explain why the moon people would come for her, because in that moment, she wished for her to get taken away, right? She didn't care about who or whatever. She wanted to be taken away. because it was coming to a head, right? Like all these suitors were coming along. They only valued her for her beauty. They didn't know her. They never seen her. They just only heard rumors enough to want to marry her, but none of them knew her, right? And she had to keep rejecting them until the point that one of them died. And I think that really weighed in on her. And then when the emperor, the one person you can't say no to, comes along, and she has to say no and disappoint her parents, like it was too much. And so she called on the moon people to come and take her back.
I want to talk about like Kaguya as a character, kind of in relation to that, about agency, because this is something that I struggle with a lot, especially when I look at like Japanese media, which is like the agency of women or female characters in that media, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously, to some extent, in the original work, she does have agency.
Right.
She's able to say, if you want to marry me, you will carry out these impossible tasks. And they can't, so they don't.
Yeah.
And she may or may not fall in love with the Empire. Not the Empire. Oh, that would be a different movie. Oh, shit, I should write that movie. Kaguya Hime and the Japanese Empire. Yikes.
I
they
feel
build
like
an empire on the moon.
There could be some parallels, maybe.
The question is, does the narrative of the movie give her agency? To some extent, for a lot of the movie, she's not getting to really make a ton of decisions.
Yeah.
The question, I guess, ends up being like, does she really ever get a choice at all?
Right.
Like, there are little moments, right, where it's just like, obviously we have the suitor thing again. We have her rebuking the emperor, which is, important. And we have her scene where she runs away.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, though, she ends up going. Like, she's taken away, right? She doesn't have a choice, even though she attempts to go back. And
yeah, she was in the middle of her speech about how great Earth is, and then they just pop the robe on her, and then she instantly forgets all her memories on Earth.
Right. Yeah, that's honestly one of the saddest endings to a movie that I've ever seen, because it comes right when you least expect it. She's just realized, and then the cloak comes on, and the kind of look goes over her face, and then there's just that last scene where the parade is going off into space, and she looks back and she's sad. And my God, from a cinematography standpoint, that last shot where she looks back is maybe one of the most gorgeous scenes that I've ever seen.
It's so you could tell just the look in her eyes, oh my God.
Right. Nothing has to be said.
Yes.
Because it's a visual medium.
Yes.
She can just look back and she can look sad. And the timing of it is perfect. And the way that the Earth looks like this lonely blue ball in the middle of nowhere is perfect, right? The ending of this movie is there's nothing that I could possibly think would make it better.
Yeah.
Every piece of this movie feels like it is important and impactful, but the last 10-20 minutes of this movie feel like the most important thing that I've ever seen when I'm watching it.
Right.
And it's like a 2.5 hour long movie. 2 hours 20 minutes, but
yeah.
But it never
credits.
feels like it's dragging. It feels like you're being taken along on a fairy tale, and it does. Yeah, it does feel sad, right?
Yeah,
and I think a lot of folk tales tend to end like this.
Yeah, though the way that I read into the ending, I had to think about it for a while. I was like, God, I feel so sad. But it was I think the last, like you said, the 10-20 minutes is the most meaningful, but it's also the part of the movie where she reveals the last verse of the song that she's been singing the entire movie, which she reveals the last verse as being along the lines of, if you pine for me, I'll come straight away. If you pine for me, if you remember me, right? And so that kind of leads into why she got taken away by the moon people, which is she pined for them and she wanted to be taken away by them. And so they came straight away. But I think because they play the song again at the end when she's looking back at Earth, it works in the reverse too. So I think it's kind of like, it's a sad ending, but it's also kind of hopeful because you hear the song again, you get reminded of the lyrics that she just said. So if she's pining for Earth, maybe she'll be able to come back again. You know, like
the answer is, of course, no.
Listen, and then they have the shot where they show the full moon and they have her baby self in there. So even if she isn't necessarily able to visit Earth again, she's at least going to forever watch over it, you know, from the moon. So that's my takeaway.
I agree with you. But I agree with you in a different way, necessarily. And
Sure.
we're getting at the same thing where
Sure.
if you pine for her, she will return.
Yeah.
This I think is a reference to her becoming this, like, symbolically the figure of the moon, right?
Right,
it's like,
right.
oh, my first girlfriend turned in the moon. That's rough, buddy.
Yeah.
Right, like that. In a sense, like, her returning to the moon is her becoming the moon.
Right.
And then there's this, and it is a kind of sadness, I think, that permeates a lot of Japanese folktales.
Yeah.
There's a lot of loss and separation and sadness, but at the same time, because it's like, you know, a Buddhist society, the underlying message of all that is at some point we will return, right? The cycle
Right.
completes.
Yeah. That's the feeling that I get too, because it is so prevalent in a lot of Japanese media, right? If they have like a tragic ending like this, it's not, you know, completely, you know, separate. Like there's not a complete cutoff from whatever important relationship that you've built the entire time.
Right. This is the thing about Japanese media that I think is probably the thing that gets translated like the worst.
Yes, I agree.
Is the fact that, like, a lot of Japanese stories have endings where
Yep.
they're sad,
Yep.
but they're open-ended enough
Yep.
where there's something
Yep.
there, right? The story doesn't matter beyond this point
Right.
insofar as what is being shown to you,
Right.
but the implication of an open ending is what's important, right? Like,
Right.
the fact that, you know, we will never see the characters looking up at the moon and thinking of Princess Kaguya, but that's
Yeah.
exactly what it's like meant to kind of
Right.
invoke in us.
Right. You'll know.
When they show her baby face on the moon, that's like, Kaguya has become the moon.
Right.
We miss her. We'll never see
Mhm.
her again. But when we
Mhm.
look up at the moon, we will think of her.
Exactly.
And it's that.
Exactly.
That's
Yes.
the essence that we just keep losing in Hollywood remakes. Okay, it's
I
not
know,
exactly
and,
that, but
I don't know.
it's part of it.
Yeah, I mean they show it like even like in other Ghibli movies, right? Like Spirited Away. You're so sad when Chihiro and Haku part ways, but they leave off on words that basically implicate that they'll probably see each other again. But yeah.
Right, like it's probably not.
Yeah, probably not, but it's open-ended and so it feels sad, right? Because you feel like, oh, probably not. But, you know that their bond still exists in some form.
This is something that I think Ghibli does like a ton of. They love it. But
Yeah.
the movie that I'm thinking about right now is specifically Kimi no Nawa, like Your Name, but also
Yeah.
anything by Makoto Shinkai, where
Yeah, exactly.
they're all the same ending, but on varying degrees
Yeah.
of the sadness slider. Where it's like Kimi no Nawa is like, oh, okay. Yeah, right? It's
Yeah.
probably the happiest ending in a Makoto Shinkai movie. Whereas 5 centimeters per second, you're like, oh no.
No.
And I will say, this is an aside about Makoto Shinkai, since we're talking about just
Yeah.
brilliant directors of animated movies. I love Makoto Shinkai, and my
Right.
favorite movie of Makoto Shinkai's is Voices from a Distant Star. I used to have that on DVD.
I love that movie.
Listen, I want to do an entire episode about that, but that comes later.
We should.
we should. We should.
That's later.
We need to do an entire episode on Makoto Shinkai. What a dude.
Yeah.
It feels like all of the essence of the folktale has been beautifully translated onto the screen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, going back to this question of agency, right? The question is, does the ending trivialize any kind of agency the narrative gives Kaguya, and I don't necessarily think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the little subversive things, especially in something like a folktale, and in the rewriting of the folktale where she completely rebukes the emperor, right? I think that displays an amount of agency that isn't trivialized or subverted by the ending. Like, I think it's still meaningful,
right?
Especially because they're in like old Japan, right? Like, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal when you turn down the head honcho.
That's big emperor boy. He gets to fuck whoever he wants.
I mean, that's what he said when he grabbed her, basically.
Yep. Let's talk about another one of the themes in the movie.
Okay.
Which is the themes of Earth's imperfections. While the original story, touches on her sadness at leaving Earth, namely her parents, right? I think the movie does a great job of showing us like why and what that's about.
Yeah.
And especially showing us the emotional impact of it afterwards, right? Like, and it's all done visually too, which I appreciate so much, right? It's not just like, oh, mother, father, I'm so sad to be leaving, goodbye, right? She looks back at the fading blue marble that is the Earth in this blackness of space and like has a single tear running down her eye, and you can tell that she doesn't know why, right? And that's like the saddest thing. Yeah. More than the separation, it's the forgetting that is the saddest part of it. This is a trope that I will die on a hill for, which is the trope of the pursuit of like, not the pursuit of, but the acceptance of imperfection, right? Where she's just like, Earth sucks, right? It's not perfect. It's not the moon.
Yeah.
But it has wonder and life and amazement, and that's like meaningful and that matters. And like, you can tell that this is obviously something that she learned from like her parents and from her upbringing, and obviously the moon people don't understand. That's Big Boss Buddha right there. Big Boss Buddha is like, y'all returning to enlightenment. Don't even think about earthly attachment.
Yeah, with that golden hair. Come on.
I think there's a lot of things in this movie where it's very softly subversive, and this is something that I will say about like Jellyfish Princess too. It doesn't make any hard statements, and there's a lot of implications, but at the same time, there's kind of this mixing of the old and the new, where it is acknowledging the importance of the oldness of like what came before, of tradition, and at the same time saying that that's not all we have to be, right? Like, we don't have to necessarily only please our parents, and we don't necessarily have to stick to the Buddhist conception of the cycle of life. But I mean, that is important to the rest of the movie, especially the song, which we'll talk about. But yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts about that? This is my favorite trope. It's my favorite trope.
I do love the trope, and I do love. I mean, it's basically like the whole theme of just accepting something as it is, like flaws and everything, right? Like that's why people like generally when they define love, they'll say like, oh, I love you for your goods and your bads, like that kind of thing, and that's basically the type of love that she has for all of Earth, like for her, the village that she grew up in, her parents and all the animals and life that she grew up around. Like, that's the type of love that she had. And she was willing to give up whatever perfect life she would have had on the moon to continue her life that was implicated as being like a punishment for her or something along those lines, right? Like some people allude to why the reason why she was on Earth was because she was punished for some kind of crime. She was happy there, right? She found happiness there that she felt was even better than whatever perfect happiness she would have had on the moon. So I love that.
I do think that there's a lot of value in this movie as kind of a historical artifact. Japan as a country has a very complicated relationship with its past. And there's value in looking at the past in order to look forward. Following World War II and the student riots and the sarin gas attacks in the subways in, I think, the 80s or 90s, Japan had this big boom of postmodernism because reality had been shattered for them. If you've ever read anything by Haruki Murakami, it deals very heavily in those kinds of themes. That's why all of his books are very Kafkaesque. They're very surreal and to the point where it's almost absurd. Like, to give you some context, in the book that I'm reading right now for class, Kafka on the Shore, Johnny Walker, who is basically somebody who is adopting the persona of Johnny Walker, the whiskey brand, kills cats and eats their hearts so that he can gather their souls to make a flute bigger than the universe. Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Colonel Sanders is a pimp who is also a fan of the Chunichi Dragons. Or is it Chunichi? I don't know.
Fried chicken pimp?
Fried chicken pimp, fan of Japanese baseball. It's weird. It's weird. It's purposefully weird, though, right? Like, it's not just, oh, look at me, Lolsa Random XD. It's like, this is bizarre because reality is fucking bizarre. And so Japan has this really kind of like storied history with like postmodernism because of this, right? And there's a lot of material having to do with amnesia and memory loss, the recovering of memory and what that means, right? And I think in a lot of ways that's the kind of tradition that this tale works in, where it is taking something traditional and filling it out and making it new, right? And using that as a way to look back into the past that they all share as Japanese culture, but at the same time to look forward into, you know, what is quintessentially Japanese, or what is quintessentially Japanese, or representative of Japanese conception of reality is what I'll say about that. Okay, that's enough of my English major ranting. Enough of Kafka. I could talk about Kafka forever, right? Like, if I could, or if I had to, I would easily be able to do an entire episode by myself about Kafka.
Talking to myself about Kafka and Japan's relationship with postmodernism. But that's neither here nor there. That's not what our podcast is about. It's a podcast about modern visual culture, and books are old. They're visual?
I mean, yeah, they are. Insofar as you read them with your eyeballs.
I think one day we'll talk about a book.
Really?
Probably.
I mean, if you want to start reading Kafka on the Shore right now,
I'm not gonna start reading.
It's only 469 pages.
No.
Of which I am 311 of the way through.
We started with a webtoon. I think we'll progress from there.
Okay, we'll talk about manga next then. Well, actually, that's not strictly true. Next week we're talking about another movie.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, look forward to that's another one we'll talk about, old and new.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk about Red Line. There's no like, I'm not gonna like be coy about it. If you want to watch the movie and then we'll talk about it, it'd be great. Not you specifically, Renu. I know you're going to do it. I meant anyone else listening.
I wanted it to be a surprise when I came on the podcast.
Yeah. But let's talk about the animation, because we can't talk about an animated movie without talking about the animation. And we did a little bit already.
Yes.
Oh God,
the animation for this movie was so freaking pretty, and it's basically exactly what you would expect out of a movie, you know, retelling a fairy tale. It has a lot of that good, sweet Djibouti traditional watercolor work. Like, if you've ever seen any of their concept art, any of their, you know, original artwork that they make, you know, before animation.
Right. It's very ink painting, and the way that it's stylized is also very like old school, new school fusion Japanese.
And it's basically like an ink painting in motion. And I don't know, I loved it so much. Just watching it, let alone the story, just watching it was such a joy. And I think because I don't know, they just use the media so well to evoke every kind of emotion out of you.
Yeah, I would say that in terms of like animation, right? Like this is a god tier movie. Like,
yeah, for sure.
From the style to the motion itself, you know, everything is so beautifully animated.
Yeah.
Plus, like, it's a timeless art style.
absolutely.
draws elements from traditional Japanese painting, but also from like kind of 50s to 80s anime slash manga, right? Where the faces are very simple. You know, they're very kind of plain. They're not like super desu, except for Emperor Man. But he's special.
He's super desu.
Yeah, he's well. Look at that man. He's just look at that dude. No, but it's a very timeless art style because it invokes. And when I say timeless, I mean it is because like it. I think timeless is kind of a complicated word to use, right? Because it's like, what is really timeless, right?
Right.
But I think that it's not so easily dated because it takes so many influences from traditional, you know, like if the core of your work is based in kind of a traditional art form, but it also takes influence from other modern techniques, it's gonna be very difficult to date, I would say, right? Because this movie, you could have told me that it had come out any time, like any year past like 2000, and I would believe you, right?
Right.
And this is something that I feel about Mononoke, if you've seen it. That also feels like... I watched Mononoke for the first time like two or 3 years ago, and I didn't know it was from 2007. Is how beautifully gorgeous that show is.
Gorgeous! Oh!
There is something special about the style that it has like chosen to employ. It works so perfectly in tandem with the movie that it doesn't age.
Right. And I love that it's not only ageless, but it's also like, yes, it's obviously very distinctly, you know, Japanese, but that type of style, like the way that the motion flows together, is something that you can find in Western animation too.
Right.
Because it's so, I don't know, the core, like you can see the rawness of it. And it reminded me, like, that entire sequence of showing like Kaguya growing up, like from an infant to a toddler, right? Like they talk about how quickly she grows up, you know, like much more quickly than any, you know, normal human baby. But all of those motions that the animations that they put into each little hobble, little step, and then how she kind of like grows in spurts. It reminded me of this one short animation by Glenn Keane called The Duet, where you see these two, like this boy and this girl, they grow up together, right? Like, and that's it the whole dynamic between Kaguya and Tamaru was reminiscent of, well, it reminded me of that animation by Glenn Keane, who was a Disney animator.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I just loved it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too.
That's all I can say.
Like, you're right though, to the extent that like it is impossible to talk about Japanese animation without talking about Western influence. Yeah. Because obviously, like, as it is, Japanese animation, as it is right now, would not exist without Disney. You know, Disney had its own sort of host of issues, culminating in a labor strike in the 40s. But the stylistic influences, it while being very Japanese, it's also a very global piece. It's very global facing.
Yes, exactly.
It's like a piece that Japan can say, like, this is Japan.
Right, exactly. Like, I would have no trouble like showing that to like if I were to run a class of kids, I would have no trouble like showing this movie to them, right? And basically being like, hey, this is a fairy tale movie.
Right. It feels like a folktale, and okay, and this is something that they do just perfectly well, right?
Yeah.
Where because they there's a lot of scenes that feel like they're out of like storybooks, where they don't necessarily fill in all the color. There's scenes where it's kind of some of the scenery just doesn't exist. Those scenes really lend to that, right?
Yes,
like the framing of that scene as a picture book lends it that feeling of being kind of a folk tale, right? It feels very storybook.
Right.
Obviously, we talked about how the animation style is, you know, both encompassing the past and the present, and it also plays into the themes of the movie of, you know, adaptation and translation of works. I I've taken like 4 or 5 classes at this point that talk just deeply about translation. And I could talk about it forever, but I won't because it'll just take too long, right? Like nobody wants to listen to me talk about translation for like 8 years. But
Yeah.
I think that as a translation of a folk tale, it is, I think, perfectly executed. I think every aspect of it was chosen so deliberately for a purpose, and the heart of the work and the sort of language that it speaks, from a metaphorical standpoint, not from a literal standpoint, they're speaking Japanese. From a metaphorical standpoint, the language is translated to the screen, and you know, Takahata understands cinema and understands anime and why that is like valuable as a medium, and that's really great because it means we get movies like this where it doesn't feel like we're just getting a fairy tale read to us. It's we are seeing it. We are along for the ride. In a sense, we are also part of Kaguya's story when we're watching it, right? And that's why it feels so compelling, because it endears us to these characters. And by the time that she has to say goodbye, you're like, I don't want to, right? Like, I don't want you to go either. I want you to stay with your family.
Yeah, I think he has such a genuine understanding, like you said, that he understands why this story needed to be told in this medium, right?
Right.
Like, it wasn't just because it was convenient for him, right? Because it wasn't just because he's, you know, part of an animation studio. It was basically like, I need to tell this story with this media that I have, and we're going to tell it this way.
That's huge, right? Like, there is all of the aspects of it work so well together because it's a movie, you know?
Yeah.
You have the animation and you have the writing of the characters.
Right.
But then you add the music. And let's talk about the music, because holy God, the music, Joe Hisaishi, you absolute madman.
I think this was the first time that Joe Hisaishi has worked on a Niseo Takahata movie too.
I think so.
Yeah. And I think I want to say I read something where there was originally going to be another composer for this movie, but things with that person didn't work out for some reason, and so they went with Joe Hisaishi, and he killed it in the best way possible.
He really did. I mean, I can't talk about music a lot because, like, I'm not a musical person, right?
Yeah.
When I talk about music, I like to talk about lyrics. Because I'm a words person. I'm bad at talking about music, but I think as far as it goes, right, like as far as I can take this, like it evokes the aesthetic that the movie is trying to portray, and it plays into the visuals in a really great way. And like the songs with the lyrics in the movie are so good. Like the nursery rhyme and the song of the Heavenly Maiden, which are part of the same song, where it's like this children's like rhyme, right? Like where they sing it, but at the same time, at the very end of the movie, that's what makes Kaguya like remember, at least for a second, that, you know, she lived here on Earth.
Yeah.
Obviously, the song is if you look at the lyrics, it's about like the cycles of nature and the cycles of like time and stuff, right? It is about those kind of Buddhist themes of the cyclical nature and the transient nature of life, where, like, you know, even if Kaguya's gone, call to the moon and she will appear. I don't know, do you have anything to say about the song?
I loved it. It
Before I
was
go into a
very
tangent?
yeah, I don't know. I love that it permeated the whole movie, you know, and and every time she sang it, she added a little more to it until you got the whole story by the end. And it was basically like its own little story unfolding within the story. And I was just like, ah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the music was perfectly suited for that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that it remained a constant throughout the movie. And I'm not gonna lie, whenever I hear this song, I tear up a little bit. Like, I just get so sad. I'm just like, because like I'm such a sucker for the trope of like playing with memory, right? Like playing with memory loss and with memory gain, or with regaining memories, right? Like what triggers the kind of like return of memories? And the fact that it was this song and that it was a bunch of these like kids that were just like singing it in this parade. And my favorite character is the attendant, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like leading it, right? And she doesn't say a whole lot, but you can tell that she does care for Kaguya. And I think that's
love
important.
the attendant.
But like her leading this little parade of kids, and they're all singing the song.
Yes.
That is the heroic climax of the movie. Even though immediately afterwards, it like we get it taken away from us. That is the moment when for a second we feel hope watching it, right? And
yeah.
makes me cry. It makes me cry. Also, here's a fun fact. I know at least one person listening will get a kick out of this. This movie is essentially the reason that an entire campaign of Dungeons and Dragons that I ran exists. Because the entire campaign is predicated on these songs that are so sad they will make you cry, but you won't even realize why you're crying.
Did you incorporate the songs into your campaign?
Not the songs specifically, but like the songs are in the campaign, yeah.
Okay.
That one scene where she's still like a little girl and she's like singing the song of the Heavenly Maiden, right? Like the version that like kind of has these sadder tones to it. And then she's just like, I don't know why I'm crying, and then she like starts laughing again, and right, like that part I don't know why, but that part particularly hits me. I think it's because it plays into a trope that I really like. I don't know how many times I'm gonna say it, but yeah, the movie is gorgeous. It's heartfelt. It's relatable. It's shockingly relatable.
Yeah.
And I would argue that it's one of the best Ghibli movies, if not one of the best movies ever animated. It's my favorite Ghibli movie. Sorry, Miyazaki.
How could you?
Sorry, Hayao.
You don't get to call him by his first name. Disrespectful.
I gotta go to bat for this movie. I think it's the most gorgeous Ghibli movie. It's a different kind of Ghibli movie, obviously, because like not all Ghibli movies are the same. Like Takahata has a different style from Miyazaki, and Miyazaki has a different style from whoever directed the other ones that I don't really watch. But yeah, it's definitely a different kind of movie. It's not what you'd expect from Ghibli, I would say. But
sure.
Nonetheless, it is beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone needs to watch it at least once.
Yeah, if you haven't watched this movie, you need to watch this movie, or else we can't be friends.
No, don't say that.
Listen, they can be friends after investing 2 hours and 20 minutes into watching a movie. I feel like that's fair.
But then I feel like you could easily put that criteria on everything else, and then they'll be stuck forever in a movie void.
No, it's just this one.
It's just this one? Are you sure?
I'm sure that this is the one thing that I will go to bat for all time. Yes.
Okay.
Also, what I find really funny, this is completely off topic. Like, we're totally done talking about the movie now. What's hilarious to me is that in the document that we're using to like outline this episode, you are an anonymous goose. Which is so close to being a swan that I'm just dying. I was just like, did she do that on purpose? No, there's no way.
There's no way. Because for me, I'm logged in, right? But there's no picture because I didn't set a picture for my account. So like you have your like Mystic Messenger boy on yours.
707 is my boy husband.
But me, I obviously don't see me being an anonymous goose, so.
I guess that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the end.
It.
I think
we talked about this lovely movie.
Talked about this lovely movie that everybody needs to go see after talking about Grand Blue Fantasy for like half an hour.
That's you.
But
I did ask questions because I was curious, but that's you.
Yeah. Where can we find you and what are you up to this week?
I am going to Animazement this weekend, like I mentioned, and it's going to be a fun time. I have a lot of friends there because that's where I lived before I live here. So, yeah, I think it'll be good. I'll be there all weekend in Artist Alley. Come Come visit my table. I'll be next to my friend, Firefly Ray. She's going to be selling lots of stuff. She's got 2 tables because she's legit.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'll be right next to her with my 1 table being like, go buy her stuff. Don't buy my stuff.
She got 2 whole tables.
2 table. Yeah.
2
So
tables.
that'll be fun.
Neat.
Yeah. What you going to be up to, buddy?
I am going to be probably just drowning in schoolwork and Overwatch. Like the newest Overwatch event came out.
Nice.
I'm super hype because there's some dope looking skins and I don't know. I just like Overwatch. Like
I forgot it's
really
almost summer.
Special. It's almost summer, so yeah, my schoolwork is ramping up a little bit. I got projects coming up, and then after that, finals, and then I'll be moving out of the dormitory, and maybe I'll be able to record with any kind of regularity and frequency.
Bruh.
But yeah, you can find me at all the places at Literal Soup. If I'm on a place, it's probably there. You can find our podcasto on Twitter at AbsoluteCast. And that's where we'll put updates and stuff. You should, and this has been understated, but Ranu did a beautiful, amazing podcasto art cover, and I used it for my profile picture because I love it so much. I've shared it for like 8 hours now.
What? Soup, no! Don't say any of this!
It's amazing. I love it. It's great, and you should look at it. No, but like,
no.
Listen, it's good. It's good.
No, it's not. It is solidly mediocre, which is exactly where I like to live.
Hey, that's my territory. You get out. You get your own absolute territory.
But we close.
Yeah. Okay, we can share. Yeah. You should also go and find us on YouTube, which you can find the link through our Twitter profile, because I don't actually know what our YouTube channel is. That's Ranu's biz. But she makes all the beautiful videos, and they're all great, and they've got
stop for singing my praises. I need to leave forever. If you just search for Absolute Territory Podcast on YouTube, we'll pop up right underneath the Ken Ashcore song.
Nice.
And yeah, that's where we live.
Listen, I like to live right below the Absolute Territory too. Yeah, no, you should go watch our videos because Renu puts a lot of work into them, and they're beautiful and lovely and sparkly. Kira desu.
No. There is a little pixel of us cooking, which I was proud of for the Shokugeki episode.
I really enjoy it when you do like the special ones. Where I'm like, oh, this is a new one, and then I like skim through the episode, and I'm like, I'm just listening to us talk, but it's actually like surprisingly entertaining. Is that okay to say? Is that okay to say that we're surprisingly entertaining?
I have a guilty pleasure of like when I edit the videos, and then I'm like, oh, I feel like we talked a lot and we had a nice conversation.
See, I will sometimes go back through our episodes and only listen to the openings and endings.
Yeah, me too. Because I'm like, oh, Soup did a good job when he edited this part together.
I think those are pretty fun. I actually also like to, if I haven't re-listened to an episode, sometimes I'll just put it on in the background and I'll like forget about it, and then I'll be like, why am I hearing myself talking? Oh.
Oh.
Also, I don't know. It is shockingly entertaining, maybe. Surprisingly, if you're expecting 0. I think mildly entertaining otherwise is pretty
That's
okay.
true, because I do have 0 expectations. Not to like talk down on us, but I also don't want to. I don't want to feel like we're singing our own praises either. It's just
Listen, it's okay. I don't have 0 expectation. I have less than 0 expectation.
Okay.
I'm just like, yeah, this is bad.
It's like, oh, this is better than 0. I think we're doing okay.
I couldn't decide what to listen to in the dining hall today, so I put on our podcast and I was like, man, the audio quality sounds way better.
I
like
do
now.
like we're slowly improving, I think.
We're slowly improving. One day
the viewers / listeners can tell us, but
one day I will have enough time to set a custom like like fine tune a custom dynamic sort of audio processing filter for both of us. Because as it stands, I'm just kind of like using the same cookie cutter that I made like 8 weeks ago because I'm lazy. Not that I'm lazy even, I just don't have time to. Whatever, I'll fix it sometime. That's fine. We'll see you in 2 weeks. we'll see you in 2 weeks. We'll talk about Redline. It's about cars and it's really fast. It's not a fast movie, but it is a fast movie. Look at you, girl, eat your fucking heart out.
I thought you were gonna curse less.
I can't not do the outro of the show.
But your resolution.
Fly me to the